In the sky, a man and woman struggle with the wind in a balloon. They try to lighten their load by throwing things out, but when that doesn't work, the man sacrifices himself by jumping off to save his beloved. This memory haunts Amelia Rennes, an aeronaut, nervous about her first balloon flight in over 2 years. Her sister Antonia advises against flying if she's not feeling well, but Amelia is determined and asks for a moment to compose herself. It's 1862, and a large crowd of Londoners has gathered to witness the balloon's launch. James Glaisher, the scientist joining the expedition, isn't concerned about the dark clouds, but his friend John True, another scientist, is worried. James reassures everyone that his calculations are correct and insists the flight will be safe, supported by the investor who funded the trip. Despite John's concerns, the balloon is set to take off today. Amelia arrives late, but makes a grand entrance, knowing that ticket sales fund their flights. She wears a colorful circus-like dress and rides atop her coach, then jokes around the balloon platform, trying to get the serious James to join in. Despite his protests, she brings a dog on board that she plans to parachute as part of their show. After a spirited speech about adventure and breaking records, Amelia releases the balloon before James finishes his preparation. As they ascend over London, James reminisces about how it all began 2 years earlier when he and John watched another balloon launch. James had sought funding from the British Society for a similar expedition, but was rejected, facing ridicule for believing weather could be predicted. The rejection hurt him deeply, even upsetting his parents. Back in the present, Amelia changes from her show dress into warmer clothes, while James sends his first pigeon with his observation. As they ascend, they enter a cloudy area, and like John, Amelia worries about a possible storm. James insists his forecasts didn't predict a storm, but soon lightning appears and strong winds shake the balloon. James falls and hits his head, causing bleeding, but Amelia refuses to land. They need to ascend above the storm. Above the clouds, a sudden strong gust shakes the balloon, throwing James and Amelia out of the basket. James manages to climb back in, but Amelia is left hanging onto a rope. James secures himself to the basket and helps Amelia back in. She throws out sandbags to rise higher and escape the storm. In the calm above, they enjoy the silence and gentle sunlight. While adjusting ropes, they spot an oriole, a bird James had only read about. They scream for fun, then hear distant city sounds, exciting James to take notes. However, Amelia is reminded of her late husband Pierre from her previous flight. After her husband's death, Amelia stayed home, drinking heavily and neglecting personal hygiene for 2 years. Recently, Antonia took her to a party to help her rejoin society. Amelia felt out of place and unapproachable, except by James, who struck up a conversation. He revealed he needed her help for a sky exploration to test weather prediction. Amelia realized James had crashed the party, which bothered her, but his passionate speech about the importance of their mission persuaded her to join him. Antonia criticized Amelia for using the balloon as an escape from her grief over her husband's death, believing her happiness in flying came from him, not from the adventure itself. Back in the present, Amelia recovers from a panic attack as James asks about her husband, but she avoids talking about him and tends to his head injury instead. They are surprised by a delightful sight. A swarm of butterflies surrounds them. James is astonished because he didn't expect butterflies to fly so high, confirming his friend John's theory. Touched by the moment, Amelia shares with James how Pierre loved the beauty of the world and thanks him for being understanding. She recalls changing her mind about the trip after her sister's concerns and going to the British Society building, where women weren't allowed, to cancel the expedition. Later, James informed his mother about the cancellation without telling his forgetful father, who still remembered enough to gift James binoculars for his upcoming journey into the sky. Back in the balloon, which is getting frosty, James lets Amelia help him record their observations. The numbers are thrilling as they gradually climb higher. They celebrate as they surpass the French record, becoming the highest flyers in history. After congratulating each other, James sends another pigeon with their data, and Amelia urges him to put on warmer clothes. James didn't bring any to keep the balloon light, worrying Amelia about him freezing. James insists they continue, emphasizing the importance of their mission and showing her the beautiful starry sky, remembering she finds joy in flying itself. Amelia agrees with the condition that she can decide when to stop. James agrees, and she releases another sandbag. A new memory begins of the night. Amelia changed her mind about the trip. She was visited by John, who came by his own choice and not because James sent him, to tell her the trip was worth the risk. He showed her James's research notes, where he had drawn some beautiful snowflakes, and admitted that sometimes James was indeed wrong. He said it would snow tonight when it wasn't. However, he also came across remarkable truths, and John thought it was Amelia's responsibility to advance the cause of science. After he left, Amelia went to visit Pierre's grave to think about it, and reached her decision when James's predictions came true and it began to snow. Back in the present, frost covers the balloon and everyone inside. James tries to send a pigeon for help, but it falls down and his last pigeon is dead. Now they have no way to signal their location if something goes wrong. James starts panicking and wants to throw out their belongings, but Amelia stops him, noting his behavior and nosebleed are signs of hypoxia, lack of oxygen affecting his brain. She wants to descend, but James insists on risking his life for science like Pierre did. Amelia slaps him to snap him out of it. The true story isn't heroic. Amelia had pushed the balloon too hard, causing it to tear. Despite tossing out items, they couldn't descend, so Pierre jumped to save Amelia. Hearing this, James apologizes and agrees it's time to descend. Amelia tries to release gas by pulling a rope, but frost prevents it. She urges James to stay awake and fight hypoxia while she climbs to manually open the valve. Frostbite starts affecting her fingers, but she perseveres, using a safety rope in case she slips. Determined not to let her husband's sacrifice be in vain, she climbs again after slipping once. James has fallen unconscious by the time Amelia makes it to the top. She tries to push the valve with her elbow, but it's stuck, so she must risk standing up and kicking it. This does work, but to keep it open, she has to take off her boot and put it between the valve and the balloon. Right after achieving this, she falls unconscious as well, only to wake up minutes later when the balloon begins descending and she slips off the edge. Meanwhile, on the ground, Amelia's family and the British Society are worried because they haven't seen the balloon fly back yet, and the estimated time of arrival has already passed. They try to stay optimistic though, because usually hearing about them means you're hearing about a disaster, so they should see silence as a positive thing and just wait. In the balloon, Amelia hangs on tightly to the rope tied around her waist, which turns out to be a lifesaver. She swings herself to reach the basket and gets back inside. She tries to wake James, initially worried she may have lost him, but he eventually responds to her shaking. They take their final measurements, and James tends to Amelia's frostbitten hand. He pauses to collect snowflakes for analysis when it starts snowing. As they wait for the balloon to descend, Amelia reflects on why she wanted to fly again, to find meaning in all she has lost. James shares some of their discoveries, noting the beauty he's seen firsthand that surpasses any illustration. They agree on the wonder of bringing the stars closer. Suddenly, Amelia sees that the snow isn't falling, it's floating, indicating the balloon is deflating. They remove the valve and throw out items to lighten the load, including their jackets and James's tool. It's not enough, and they feel hopeless for a moment. James suggests they both climb onto the balloon hoop and then cut the ropes to release the basket. The balloon descends rapidly, and Amelia briefly considers sacrificing herself like her husband did, but James stops her. He proposes cutting the cords that hold the balloon's shape, causing it to act like a parachute. This slows their descent, though it's still rough. The balloon passes through trees, causing James to fall, and drags Amelia along the ground before finally stopping. She falls unconscious for a few minutes, and when she wakes up, she rushes to find James, meeting him halfway because he had been looking for her too. Together, they help each other stand up and return home. It's estimated that they've reached a height of 37,000 feet that day, 7 miles high. Their success makes it to the news and is seen by James's parents, who are proud of their son. His findings prove the existence of layers in the atmosphere, a discovery that leads the way to the first weather forecasts and has earned James the respect of his peers. After spending some time with her sister and nieces, because she mustn't forget to live, Amelia and James build a new balloon to go flying again and continue their research. Thanks for watching.